you have big shoes to fill. The giants came before you. They've written down the blueprint. They've handed it to you. It's up to you to pick it up, to soak it in, to read it, to cultivate it, to perfect it, to master it.
All right, hey everybody, thanks for coming back. Choices, not chances. I've got a good one for you today. Sean Carano joins the show today, and he's going to talk about the Honor Foundation and what the Honor Foundation is doing for transitioning members of the community, and excited to have him on. Sean, thanks for coming out.
Hey Ryan, thanks. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. So I just want to kind of get into it. We'll talk kind of wave tops of your career, kind of like we did offline, and we can go into more detail than you did if you choose. But then I really want to touch on the Honor Foundation and what you guys are doing there, how you landed in that role, and then how you have continued to drive the foundation through the role that you were given. But if you want to start at the beginning, that'd be great. We talk about where you come from and who you come from. I like to understand where people come from and the family dynamic in which they grow up.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. So if we could start there, that'd be great.
Yeah, sounds great. So, grew up kind of middle class outside Cleveland, Ohio. My dad was a firefighter, retired after 30-some years. Stepmom was a school teacher. Oldest of 7 kids from a mixed marriage, so it was a bit of a Brady Bunch +1 type scenario. And, nothing really remarkable about growing up there. I was a wrestler in high school. Middle school was a little rough, not the greatest neighborhood. So started wrestling because I didn't like getting beat up.
Yeah.
Had some friends that were on the wrestling team, and so got into that pretty heavily. That kind of became my passion, and we had a really good program. Historically, we were one of the best in the state of Ohio.
Okay.
For a long time, a lot of state champions, and so that was kind of like my dream. Worked really hard, just came up a little bit short. Qualified for the state tournament as a senior, but didn't place there. And, kind of just fell into this Marine Corps thing. I remember it was a Saturday morning, Marine recruiter cold called my house. It's like, hey, why don't you come down? Let's talk about your future. I had no real direct connection to the military in that my dad didn't serve. He was born a little bit too late for Vietnam. But still, we had a tradition of service again. He was an EMT and a firefighter. My parents divorced when I was around 11. There was a period of time there briefly where my mom and I weren't getting along great. So I just went to live with my dad kind of exclusively. And I remember I would ride my bike, a few blocks in the evenings and just kind of hang out with him and his buddies out on the front porch of the fire station. They'd be out there joking, smoking, doing whatever. And so anyway, the Marine recruiter called, asked my dad what he thought about it. He said, let's go check it out. Went in and, they got me. They laid out the tiles and they're like, hey, pick 3, see the world. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be ironic when I circle back around later to that part of the story, but.
Was see the world your number one?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I wanted to get out there and travel. I guess I'll tell you the punchline now. The joke is that I kept going back to the same neighborhood, so you can probably imagine where that was.
I gotcha.
But, oldest of 7 kids, and we didn't have a lot of money, so I knew that I wanted to go to college. I was a really good student, and so they're like, hey, let's make you a reservist. We'll do the weekend warrior thing. We'll help you out with GI Bill. Again, this is all pre 9/11. This is 1997, 1998. So it was a much different dynamic back then.
Sure.
And I was like, cool. Went to MEPS, like raise the right hand, all the things. Well, a couple months later, we have these like pool E meetings where everyone comes into the recruiting station, do some pull-ups, some run around the block, make sure you're not getting in trouble because, as recruiter doesn't get credit for you until you actually graduate boot camp. So
that's right.
They want to make sure that everybody was staying on glide path. And so they pull me in one day and they shut the door. And they're like, hey, we got your transcripts. And again, I was a pretty good student, had good test scores and all that stuff.
Like high school, you got your high school transcripts. Yeah.
My high school transcripts, exactly. And so the gunny of the recruiting station's like, you need to fill out this scholarship application. And so I'm looking at the paperwork, and it's, you know, an ROTC scholarship type deal. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, I'm the weekend warrior guy. I'm the reservist, you know. I don't even know if I want to do this full time, let alone be in charge of people. And they basically locked the door and said I wouldn't leave until
You're ours.
until I fill out the paperwork. I was like, yes, Gunnery Sergeant, like, fill it out. So fast forward a few months, found out I actually got selected for ROTC scholarship. At that point, I had to figure out where the hell I'm going to go to school. Mm-hmm. And I was big into wrestling. I wanted to go to Iowa. That was kind of the powerhouse at the time. I'd been to their camp in the summer, kind of gotten the shit kicked out of me. But, you know, when you're 17 and
Sure.
dumb, like, you think you can accomplish anything. And so Iowa accepted me and sent me a really nice letter that said I was welcome to come there and pay them something to the tune of like $34,000 a year in out-of-state tuition.
Oh, yeah.
Again, oldest of 7 kids, pretty modest means. Dad's like, hey, like, you're on your own. Like, I got 6 others here to feed and clothe. So I go back to the recruiter and I'm like, hey, what do you think? And he's like, hold on. He picks up the phone. He calls Ohio State to talk to the Marine officer instructor. When he puts the phone down, he's like, you're in. So
Nice.
Without ever having done a visit, never having stepped foot on campus, I said, well, I guess I'm going to Ohio State. It can't be all bad. There's 50,000
Not a terrible
students.
school.
Yeah, you know, like 50,000 students. That's like 25,000, you know, undergrad, you know, female potential
Absolutely.
people to date. So I thought that couldn't be horrible, and decent football team. So drove down there, checked into the ROTC unit, and you know, just kind of went from there. Had a really good time in college, and then of course, you know, going into my senior year of high school, 9/11 happened, which just changed everything. So get commissioned, go to TBS. This is July of 2002. I check into the basic school in Quantico.
I bet that's a different feel for the instructors there, because you go from not being at war to now you're at war. And now I'm just saying, I'm sure the overhaul and the personality and the intensity was up.
Yeah, it was really a unique time in and of the fact that when I checked into TBS, Afghanistan wasn't really a thing. Like, Task Force Ripper had gone in, you know, they'd kind of turned that over to the Army and SOF, and we weren't really talking about it a lot, at least not in the school, in the classroom environment. What really started around that time was the drumbeat for Iraq, more towards the end of our course, because we graduated in January of 2003. So we were already flowing forces into Kuwait. And I remember hearing stories, because this is kind of crazy. So the reason my career has really taken some interesting turns. You know, TBS is a very infantry-centric school. I had a lot of SPCs, or staff platoon commanders, there that were infantry officers, and that was what I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to be an infantry officer, and so in order to do that, you know, you compete for your MOS there. I did well in the school, but not well enough. I failed final land nav, which
no way.
was brutal. Yeah, so, you know, for the audience, you know, you go out, you're given a series of points, and you have to go find these boxes. It's basically an ammo can sitting up about 3 feet above the ground on an engineer stake with a number painted on it. And so, you know, you write down the number, and then you go back and you turn in your card. Well, I had gotten 90 or 100 on every single land navigation exercise that we had done until the final exercise. And then you go out to this huge training area, training area 16, there in Quantico. And all I remember is I got to one of my attack points, and I looked out, and I had to walk, I don't know, 600, 800 meters or something to find this box. And all I could see to the horizon was water. And if you're familiar with Quantico, there's a lot of very active beavers on Quantico, and there's a lot of streams. And I think what had happened is they had dammed up this area and just basically flooded out an entire, you know, grid square, or, you know, square kilometer. And so I went to my next attack point, and I looked out, and it was nothing but water. And then the next one, same deal. So I think I just got the luck of the draw that day. I ended up failing that exercise, having to go back and remediate on a Saturday. The most you can get then is a 70 if you fail. I was pretty bummed, and it kind of dropped me down in the class standing.
Yeah.
So I was basically the first guy that didn't get his first choice.
Oh, it sucks.
I knew some guys that had done communications, and I was like, well, that doesn't seem horrible. You know, you can be assigned to any unit in the Marine Corps. So I put comm as my number one choice. As luck would have it, that class runs twice a year. It's a 6-month MOS producing school, and we missed it by 2 weeks. So they came back and said, hey, you don't start until July. We're just going to stash you here, and we're going to put you in the instructor battalion across the street, and you're going to be in charge of the communication platoon over there. I know nothing about radios at this point other than like how to put a battery in, because they taught us how to do that during training. And so I'm there for 5.5 months. I'm helping out with different training exercises. I became a martial arts instructor, which was cool. But this is while the ground invasion for Iraq happened. So, like, we go in, I'm watching it on TV. Like, we go to Baghdad, and then, like, we're retrograding. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, that was
the war's over.
Like, I missed it. And it was soul crushing.
Oh, yeah.
So go check into comm school. That's a 6-month school. So fast forward to December of 2003 at this point, and they're like, hey, where do you want to go? I'm like, well, I want to go to the 1st Marine Division. I want to go to Southern California. San Diego sounds awesome. By this point, it looked like we might be going back. And so I went and I checked in January. Of course, all my buddies hooked me up. They're like, yes, we'll all go check in together, like solidarity. Well, you know, those dudes all like scooted out there early, checked in, and got assigned to like 2-5 and like 1-4, and like they're all leaving in February. And I get last pick. I get 11th Marines, which had a bunch of broken gear and wasn't planning on going anywhere. And I'm like, here we go again. Yeah, story of my life, right? Like day late, dollar short. Ironically, a couple months later, as you know, General Mattis takes the 1st Marine Division into Fallujah, and there was a rocket attack that injured Colonel Nicholson and killed his communication officer, Major Kevin Shea. So we're standing in the office there at 11th Marines, and the corporal walks in to this captain that I was working for at the time. She's like, sir, the CG's on the phone. We're like, what? So he answers the phone. It's General Mattis. And he's like, hey, and he calls him by his first name. He's like, I need you. Like, get your stuff, get over here. Like, we're going back in. So he is gone in like 2 weeks. They send a replacement down from the division headquarters, and the deal was I was going to stay there because I'd been with the regiment for a while, like kind of knew how we went to the field and that sort of thing. And they're like, hey, help the new guy. Like, he's a pilot that became a commo. He doesn't really know. He doesn't have a lot of experience. And then I'll bring you over and you'll join me in Fallujah in a few months. I was like, oh, sweet. RCT1, like, let's do this. And then, you know, as luck would have it, one of the battalions deployed, 211, to Ramadi, fired their combo 2 weeks into the deployment. So I already had my bag packed, plane tickets booked, all that stuff. Battalion commander calls back to the regiment. He's like, I need a replacement. So they rerouted me, ended up in Ramadi, which actually ended up being a great thing because...
04?
Yeah, this is...
Ramadi was tough, 03, 04.
Yeah, we weren't like in the city. We were doing convoy escort. We left the cannons, and we had multiple missions. So convoy escort was one. We ran the DETFAC, like there on Junction City, like doing some other things. And so that ended up being a great deployment. Kind of turned the platoon around. Had a great leadership team, great group of lieutenants. You know, the LPA was strong. And then when I came back, what that allowed me to do eventually was to move over to Force Recon. Had I gone...
You mean being a commo there afforded you the experience and stuff to come back, or you got like requested to come over?
Just the timing of it.
Oh, okay.
If I had gone to RCT1, I think I would have gone down a different path.
Okay.
3-1 was actually looking for a replacement to go out and do another deployment on the back end. I mean, if you remember back then, it was just
like always
6 months, like heel toe. And I was a young single lieutenant, so I'm like, hey man, let's do this.
Ta-da!
And again, like in the back of my mind, having sat through the ground invasion, watching it on TV,
not
CBS,
participating,
I'm like, I need to get mine while I can.
Yep.
But again, like, you know, call it providence or divine intervention. I think timing is everything. That's one thing I've learned throughout my career. But had I gone to RCT1, I probably would have just been eventually gone down to 3-1 and deployed again. But being at 211 allowed me, timing wise, to go try out for First Force. And then again, this is another lesson that I've learned, is that in a lot of ways, the Marine Corps especially, and just life in general, is a relationship business. And what was unique about that was my battalion commander at 211 and the CO at First Force at the time, a guy by the name of George Smith, eventually retired as Lieutenant General George Smith. They were lieutenants together on the drill field, way back when. So my battalion commander basically called George Smith and vouched for me, giving him a recommendation. I still had to pass the screener, which again failed the first time because I couldn't.
Or to be like the NDOC?
Yeah, at First Force.
Was it land nav again?
Nope.
Okay.
Treading water.
It was what?
Treading water.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, treading water for 30 minutes in full camis smoked me. And so
that's not easy. I did it.
Yeah.
I did the recon NDOC when it was 05, 06. And they volunteered me to do it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had just gotten my first squad. So I went over there and smoked it and got accepted and then turned it down to go back to 3-2. It's probably one of the biggest mistakes of my career. I mean, it ended up okay, whatever. But
yeah,
I really wanted to do that, but I really wanted a squad. So anyway, sorry, I digress.
Sometimes you got to make choices.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went over. They were actually deployed at the time, and so I failed. I couldn't tread water for the required 30 minutes. I walked into the XO's office afterwards, a guy by the name of Lance Dowd. He was a major at the time. And I said, "You don't know me. My name's Sean Carano. I'm a lieutenant over at 11th Marine Regiment." I said, "I just failed your screener, but I'll be back." And I spent literally every day for the next month in the pool at Las Pulgas, just treading water. Went back, passed it. Again, my battalion commander had kind of vouched for me with George Smith, so they cut me orders. And then I joined that unit in summer of 06 in Al-Assad. Did a quick turnover. Their commo was, I think he got orders to go be like the Marine officer instructor at Northwestern or something, so he had to leave early. And then we came back. That was September of 2006. We redeployed. Little did I know at the time, this thing called MARSOC was kind of percolating.
Right there around 06, right?
Yeah, so they stood up the command here at Lejeune in February. And then the deal was that First Force and Second Force would become 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion, 2nd Marine Special Operations Battalion. So we came back in September, took post-deployment leave, and then in October we had a ceremony where George Smith cased the colors of First Force and Neil Shuley unfurled the first MSOP colors, and then away we went. And that was wild. So just being there on the ground floor, day one, trying to figure out what's this soft thing. I know you've had John Daly on the podcast, one
phenomenal.
of the original Det 1 guys. We had a few guys like that were around at the time, but for a lot of us, we were just kind of figuring it out as we go. I
think a lot of you were just figuring it out in Det 1, right? I mean, John said the same thing, even though he kind of had the ability to pick and get some guys together. It was all just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
Because there was no structure. And that was it Rumsfeld that made them do that, made the Marine Corps do that, I think. They didn't even want to do it. Yeah,
it was a really unique environment. We stand up, first MSOB, and I think it was 4th Platoon immediately became MSOC Alpha, so that was Bruce Sotier. And Fred Galvin had, around that time, deployed Fox Company.
I've had him on, too.
Yeah, I know Fred as well. Obviously, that didn't go super well.
Check. Yeah.
So when Bruce went in, it was kind of hey, don't screw this up, or they might get rid of us. I don't know if that was the official Marine Corps or SOCOM stance, but that's kind of what was happening around the water cooler, room within the compound. Obviously, Bruce did a great job. 20 years later, we're still around. So,
it worked out.
Yeah. Again, timing is everything. So fast forward about a year, I was the battalion commo or S6 officer, and then it actually rated a major. So they sent some guy down from the MEF, And then we had this other thing that was like co-located. It was a support detachment, and they rated a captain and a major combo as well. So where I had been doing one job, now it was 4 people, and I became expendable. And I wanted to deploy. They kept trying to get me out on some kind of individual augment that would, fall through for one other reason or another. And then we did a reorg, sort of, where instead of having this 54-man direct action special reconnaissance platoon, or what we called the DASSER, they went to a 14-man team model. What that did was increase the requirement for captains. We didn't have enough because each team was supposed to be led by a captain.
Mm-hmm.
And so the OPSO at the time was a guy by the name of Brian von Herbulis, who eventually became the CO of 1st Recon Battalion. Great guy. He pulls me in his office. He's like, hey, I'm taking Delta Company to Afghanistan. Pack your shit. Get in the trailer, like, we deploy next January. And I was like, man, you don't have to tell me twice.
Yeah.
Like, I think I set a record for like cleaning out my office. And so again, it was just wild. Like, we were figuring it out. Got to go to SEER school, got to go to Airborne, do some other cool things. Got to take the ADVON into Afghanistan and do the PDSS with, the ops chief and the intel officer and a couple other dudes. And
Yeah.
Vaughn was just a great guy. Like, he trusted me. I had to figure out a lot of different things. Like, I didn't know anything about embarkation. It took us 12 C-17s to get all gear over there.
Holy shit.
I went over and like cut a drug deal with 3-8 at Bastion, so they would let us use some of their building spaces.
Yeah.
I went and cut a drug deal with AOB there at Camp Calero, so we could bring in our trucks, get all the counter IED stuff and the SATCOM and everything like set up before we pushed out, and like brought in the FSRs and all that stuff. So that was a really cool experience. And then I got selected for this thing called the Olstead program, like shortly after arriving in Afghanistan, which was really a kind of unexpected as far as the timeline went. I knew it was potential because I had applied for it before we had deployed.
What is it?
So essentially it's a scholarship to go to a foreign university, learn a language, study culture, and then go back to the military.
Gotcha.
And it was an endowment that was set up by a World War II general by the name of George Olmstead. He had fought in World War II in Korea, but his assignment after World War II was to sell surplus army equipment to the Chinese. And what he learned through that experience was that a lot of times Americans have a very egocentric view of the universe, and we tend to view things through our own lens and prism, and we don't take into account other cultures and things of that nature. So his goal was that we would send young officers out and that they would learn these lessons so they could be more effective when they became senior officers. Yeah. Kind of the, the avatar, so to speak, is General Abizaid. General Abizaid was an Olmstead scholar. He got his degree at the University of Amman in Jordan, speaks fluent Arabic, and then fast forward like 30-some years was the CG of Central Command, or CENTCOM.
Well, I think it makes complete sense. I think probably one of the reasons that we fucked up in a couple of wars prior to this 20-year one was lack of understanding of other cultures. So other religions, other cultures, I think we've definitely gotten better about it, and things like that help, but misunderstanding the culture can really make things more dangerous for you than.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to like the strategic corporal, just doing the wrong thing, shaking hands with the wrong hand, or that sort of thing. So so I'd applied for this scholarship because I knew coming off that deployment I was going to be due for orders. They were going to move me somewhere, and I had a great mentor, a guy by the name of John Chavez, who was a fellow captain and prior enlisted guy. But John just has this really unique ability to kind of cut through a lot of the BS and get down to like brass tacks. And he told me one time, if you want to own your career, you got to take charge of it. Like, don't let the monitor just dictate where you go. And so I'd applied for the Olmstead program. So I got an email when I was in Afghanistan that said, hey, congratulations, you've been selected. But I had to go back early to go check into DLI to spend a year learning Hebrew before they were going to send me abroad. So
is that where you went?
Yeah.
Went to Israel?
Yep.
That's awesome.
So left Afghanistan, did turn over there, and then left those guys a few months early, which was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
The deployments prior to that, I'd kind of just gotten dropped in, almost like a combat replacement type deal. This one, I'd actually participated in the full workup. I had really strong relationships with these guys. And so that was tough. And then you want to talk about culture shock. So I'm in Afghanistan. I'm a company XO. We've got teams in 3 different locations actively engaged in combat. We've got, 120 dudes and probably $30-some million of equipment that I'm kind of indirectly responsible for in some way, shape, or form. Fast forward 2 weeks, I'm in DLI. There's 105, another 03, and just a bunch of like E1, E2s, mostly Navy, and a bunch of Israeli instructors. And I've got like these Navy E2s that are walking up asking me if they can go use the bathroom. And I'm like, why are you even talking to me?
Get away
There's
from
a
me.
petty officer right there. Like, go ask that guy.
Yeah.
And it was actually comical because to truly learn a language, you got to kind of just F it up a lot. Like, you have to make a lot of mistakes and learn through iteration. And so it took me a while basically to just put my shields down and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So what that led to was my teachers thought I was kind of like slow. Like, they thought I was like the dumb kid.
Yes.
I ended up actually finishing the course with honors, and they joked about it at the graduation ceremony. They thought that I was the slow kid for the first, couple of months. But
Nice.
yeah, so that ended up working out. But I guess I should, add, I got married 2007. So between
During that year?
No, this was like between the deployment to Iraq in 06 and then the Afghan deployment. I got married and we had our first child, my son Logan. DLI, my son Tristan was born. So when we PCS to Israel, I had a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old.
Oh my goodness. Your whole family went over there.
Oh yeah. And so we got this really nice apartment in Jerusalem. Like, I'm going to school. It was a really cool experience. Much like a deployment, though, but like a really extended deployment from an emotional perspective. On a deployment, like, you're really kind of on this like emotional high when you get there. You're super excited to be there. And then you kind of like, it falls off, and after about 4 months, you're just looking at the guy next to you like, I hate the way you breathe. I don't want to be around humans. And then you see that light at the end of the tunnel, and so it kind of starts to pick up. It was like that, but over like a 2-year period. Like 6 months into it, I'm like, hey, this is great. And then it was just like, nothing here works. It's all backward. Like, things that should be easy are complicated. Things that should be complicated seem to be easy. Like, this makes no sense. But it was a really cool experience. I got to do some fun stuff over there. Actually played on a tackle football league, like an 8-man team. The talent level wasn't spectacular. I didn't even play high school football, and I think I was like the defensive MVP of the league, like middle linebacker or something. But it was a cool way to just practice the language and learn the culture.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we came back from there. My daughter was actually born in Israel a couple months before we came back to the States. Her birthday was actually yesterday. Shout out to Reagan.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. And what was cool was that, so Sunday was Father's Day, but the year she was born, her birthday fell on Father's Day. So I always tell her that, she was the best Father's Day present that I ever got. So
it's funny. I was born on Father's Day, 1986.
Oh, that's awesome.
June 15th.
Yeah. Well, happy belated.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. No, that's too cool.
Yeah. So
did the kids have issues over there, or were they, did you do like did they learn the language too?
Yeah,
so like
actually, that's a great question. So when we got there was a little bit of I wouldn't say it's a mix-up, but the State Department wanted us to live in embassy housing, and Olstead wasn't going to pay for that. It was like twice as expensive to live in embassy housing than for me just to get my own apartment. But we didn't know that until we showed up in the country. It's one of these deals where Olmsted pays for you to go, and they'll pay for your tuition and stuff, but a lot of it's on you to figure out. And so we got there, and we had to go meet with the people at the consulate.
I just figured the Marine Corps would put you up, especially if you're over there.
Yeah, well, we kind of fell under the Chief of Mission Authority, and so then again, they had to work out like how this was going to go. So we went in, we had a meeting, and they're like, no, like, we would like you to be in embassy housing, but we're not going to mandate it. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So now I got to go find my own apartment. So we were staying in a hotel. We basically drew like a mile, perimeter circle around the consulate, because that was where we would go see, the doctor. We would get our mail. We could cash checks there and get local currency.
Where was school? Close to that, or?
A couple miles.
Okay.
I bought a car off a guy that worked there at the consulate. So, it was like, hey, this is kind of the epicenter. We need to be close to here. Well, right next door was a YMCA that had a daycare. My oldest, again, he was about 2 years old, and then his brother was 3 months. So he was too young to go to the daycare, but my 2-year-old's like bouncing off the walls at this point. Like, we're living in hotels.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a kitchen. We don't have the ability to do laundry. Like, every time we have to go eat, he's got to sit for 45 minutes. So he's losing his mind.
Yeah, man.
But they had this daycare center there at the YMCA, and it was actually a really cool story. They started in the 80s as a peace initiative. So each class had an Israeli teacher who spoke Hebrew and an Arabic teacher who spoke Arabic, or a Palestinian teacher that spoke Arabic.
Okay.
Because East Jerusalem is heavily Palestinian.
Yep.
And they figured if you just got young kids together and they could develop relationships, then maybe they might want to destroy each other when they become adults.
Seems plausible to me.
Seems like a great concept, right? So we enroll Logan in the school, and literally for the first probably 60 days, every day, my wife would go pick him up, and like she'd be in tears and he'd be in tears because he couldn't communicate. So, some kid would take his toy, they'd get in a fist fight. I'd have to go to the school, talk to the teacher, figure out what happened, go home, explain.
Seems like that's what they're doing 20 years later.
Yeah. But I told my wife at the time, I'm like, hey, like, let's just, kind of see how this goes. And kids are like sponges, man.
Yeah.
60 days in, something just clicked in his brain, and he just became like this little translator guy. Like, he learned the language. Like,
what
no big
is
deal.
they call it something. You can do it here with your kids too. It's like over.
I'm not sure.
There's something where they put the kids in where at 4 or 5 hours at the school, it's a private school.
Yeah.
They speak only X language.
Oh, like language
immersion.
Yeah.
Couldn't come up with it. Yeah. Language immersion. Yeah. And I think that's probably the best way, right?
Yeah. I mean, he basically became like her translator. So
no shit.
Like, she'd be in the grocery store and some Israeli would walk up and ask her a question. She'd look at him in the stroller. He would tell her what was said.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
That's great.
In fact, I used to come home from school and I would ask him, how was your day or something, and he would respond in Hebrew, and then he would turn and tell her in English because he understood. Yeah.
And you knew Hebrew well enough to speak Hebrew with him?
Yeah, because
Okay.
I'd studied for a year at DLI.
Prior to coming out, that's right.
And then when I got to Israel, every semester I would take another semester of Hebrew language at the university.
Is it hard?
It's difficult. They read right to left instead of left to right. So that's kind of challenging. The vocabulary is a little bit different.
Does it make more sense than our language?
I think so.
Like once you get the
Yeah, it's pretty structural. They use 3-letter roots.
Okay.
And so then there's different like ways to conjugate verbs and things like that. So if you know the root, you can kind of infer a lot. But again, it's like anything else. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Sure.
So yeah, it was cool. I enjoyed learning
That's really
Hebrew.
cool.
I enjoyed my experience in Israel, like I said. So yeah, then my daughter was
You have a bunch of people. Did you meet a bunch of friends over there, or not so much, just more military?
I didn't really have a lot of exposure to the military. I met people through the school. I met people in the neighborhood. I met people through playing, tackle football,
Sure.
stuff like that. I didn't really keep in contact with a lot of people just because when I got back to the Marine Corps, it was so busy again, deploying and stuff like that. But it was a really great experience. I had the opportunity to go back a couple of times, which was cool. For different things, but yeah,
our contractor company deals with them a little bit, and I hadn't had the opportunity yet, and then everything kind of happened that's happening. But I look forward to it. I'd like to go for sure.
Yeah, Israel's a great place. The food's incredible. I love the Mediterranean diet.
Med's got some good food.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
And you see some things over there that are normal for there that you kind of like do
Like
double
what?
take. Well, the soldiers always have their weapons with them, and so I'd be walking down the street in Jerusalem and I'd see like a 19-year-old female Israeli soldier with a bedazzled iPhone, and she's got her M4 strung over her back, and there's a magazine in. It's a little unnerving.
Yeah, until somebody takes hang gliders and comes in and kills a bunch of their people. Then
Yeah.
it's like, why didn't you have guns? No, I get it. I get what you're saying, but that is different for sure. Yeah, that's a different spin on it.
But that's normal for there.
Yeah, that's just what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was cool.
They have a completely different world dynamic, where they are versus where their enemies are. Yeah. That's wild. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point, so I took a tour when I was there. There's a town called Sderot, which is like a mile from the Gaza border, and the bus stops in Sderot are 2-inch reinforced concrete bunkers.
Holy shit.
Because when the air raid siren goes off, you basically have 30 seconds to take cover because of time of flight. And they took us to the police station. There's a big, kind of rack of shelves behind the police station. There must have been 400 expended Katyusha rockets, on this thing. That's where they kept the evidence. And that's just a completely different, lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And you're kind of thinking to yourself, like, why don't these people just move? But
Move where?
to them, that's their ancestral homeland. They've lived there for thousands of years. Like, why would they move? So
yeah.
Just a completely different perspective. And you try to explain that to people. And again, I spend a lot of time in Southern California. And the way I would equate it is if people were lobbing rockets on a daily basis from Tijuana, like the United States wouldn't really put up with that for very long. So, it's definitely an interesting place.
What about the people, like the young people, the youth? Are they just that much more resilient than our people because of that, or is it just a different normal?
It's a different normal. So I took my degree is actually in Israeli culture and politics. My master's that I got when I was over there, and so I took a lot of classes that were kind of focused around that. And the joke is that you won't meet an Israeli with a retirement account. Like their time horizon and conceptualization is just different from ours because Iran has nuclear weapons. So, tomorrow might not ever come, and so why would I save for the future? Why don't I just enjoy today?
Enjoy it right now.
And so you kind of see that perspective. It's also a very tribal society.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard the expression 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
No.
Okay. Well, there's like this thing several years ago. If you named an actor in Hollywood, people could through like 6 hops connect them to a movie that Kevin Bacon was in.
Okay.
And the theory is that 6 degrees of separation, like everyone knows everyone, but you're 6 degrees removed. In Israel, I found it was more like 3. Because everyone serves in the military and they do reserve duty until 54 for the men. So for 2
always.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It goes back to their early defense strategy. So if you go back to like the 67 war, Yom Kippur, the Arabs, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, literally hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Israel had a population of, I think, around that time, a couple million. Today it's like 6 or 7 million, maybe 8.
Mm-hmm.
Around the time I was there, it was around 6. So just a much smaller population. For the Egyptians to park an infantry division or a corps of a couple, 500,000 soldiers on the Gaza border and just let them sit was like no big deal. It didn't affect the economy whatsoever. For the Israelis to mobilize that large of a force and go park an opposing force on the other side of a border as a deterrent literally shuts down the country.
Yeah, it's everything.
Because, garbage isn't getting picked up, cabs aren't being driven, like all the basic services.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where preemptive strike, technological superiority, having an ally like originally the French gave them Mirage jets and things like that back in the 70s, and then now the United States. That's part of their defense strategy, and then obviously the nuclear deterrent as well.
Absolutely.
So it's a really complex, fascinating place. But yeah, So they serve until age 54. Actually, a cool story. When I was over there, there's a mountain in the very northern peak of the Golan called Mount Hermon, right up at the Lebanese, Syrian, Israeli border there. And in the winter, occasionally it will snow. And when it does, like the whole country shuts down. Like everybody's just like driving north, like we're going skiing. Yeah, like everybody. And so I had some buddies visiting, and it snowed, and so we're like, hey, we're going snowboarding on Hermon. So we're snowboarding down the mountain. One of the guys that I actually played rugby over there too. One of the guys I play rugby with comes skiing down the mountain. He's in his IDF uniform, like snow parka, with his M4 on his back. And I'm like, dude, like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm doing reserve duty. And he was teaching guys to ski that had lost limbs, like on like a single ski, like in combat.
Yeah.
And that was his like job for 2 weeks on reserve duty. I'm like, well, that's a cool job.
Yeah, get after it.
But again, like just a completely different perspective on life.
Yeah, for sure.
To them, that was just like Tuesday, you know?
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah.
Grab my M4 and my skis.
Yep.
Yeah. That's dope.
Yeah. So really interesting experience. Again, my daughter was born there, and then we moved back to San Diego. I was assigned to Comm Squad 38. That was interesting. I'd never been in the air wing before. What I learned was like pilots.
That's a different culture too, isn't it?
They plan on a 72-hour ATO cycle, so getting them to do anything like a week, 2 weeks, or a month out was always a challenge. Didn't do WTI, but did a deployment. Went over to Bahrain. We did Mag 50 before they stood up the SP MAGTAF.
Old Manimal.
Yep. We were actually down in Isa, at the southern tip.
I know where that's at.
Yeah, it was hilarious because we thought it was great. Like we were living in Cairns. There's a beer garden. The day we moved in, they were unloading like DVD players and mini fridges into our rooms. And I had a couple lieutenants that were pissed. They're like, "This isn't a real deployment." And we're like, "This is great.
This is more than what you want. I promise."
This is incredible. And I think they left their appliances in the box for like the first half of the deployment just in protest. But we're like, "Yeah,"
because they hadn't been there yet.
Yeah.
They chasing it.
Yeah. So came back from that, and then that was around the time MARSOC was creating their 0370 officer MOS.
Okay.
And so this MAR admin dropped, "Hey, if you'd been in the command and you'd previously deployed, you could apply to lat move to 0370. So I threw my name in the hat again, got selected for that, and that triggered orders from Southern California back to Lejeune, which was the first time I've ever been stationed here. That was 2015, and then ended up riding out my career the last 7 years up on the compound at Stone Bay.
Why are you still here?
That's a good question.
Because Cali's way nicer. I was just there not long ago. It was way nicer.
Yeah, so life has a funny way of dictating sometimes. So got here. I started getting into triathlons when I was in SoCal. And the first weekend that we were in North Carolina, we were still living out of boxes. That was kind of my introduction to TMO. They're like, "Hey, your stuff's here, but it's in a warehouse in Jacksonville. We'll deliver it in 2 months when we get some people to unload the truck." And I'm like, sweet. Hop on my bike on a Sunday morning, go out for a ride, and a mile down the road in Surf City, I got clipped by a car. Yeah, she hit my back wheel as I was kind of crossing in front of her. She was pulling out on a side street. Hit the pavement, cracked my T12 vertebrae, and ended up in the ER. They called it an avulsion fracture. There's these like ligaments that connect your vertebrae, and it, like the pressure or the compression had like pulled a little chip of bone off. So luckily I didn't need surgery, but they put me in a brace for 90 days.
Like a back brace?
Yeah.
Okay. That sucks.
Yeah, it sucked a lot. It ended up kind of being a blessing. MARSOC's got an incredible, physical fitness and just a lot of resources for guys that are rehabbing from different types of injuries. So I got real familiar with that real fast. Mm-hmm. But it was really stressful. My ex-wife really didn't want to come to California. She was born in NorCal. That was kind of where her family was. And so I didn't do the best job of communicating my intentions. Orders kind of surprised her. So there's a little bit of tension on that front. And then I get hurt. And they were going to deploy me in November of that year to Lebanon as an individual augment. Because coming back into the community after 6 years, they weren't really sure what to do with me.
Sure.
I was kind of an unknown quantity. Again, it's a relationship business. A lot of the people that I knew that I'd served with, during my initial tour with MARSOC had gone on to other things.
Yep.
And so that all kind of compounded. Eventually, I rehab. They pushed the deployment back. I ended up going out in February of 2016. Went to Jordan instead.
Did you like Jordan?
It was cool. I was working out of the embassy. Again, kind of an independent operator. I was the SOC forward J3 or operations officer.
Okay.
It was a really small staff. We had an AOB out at one of the training sites out there, and I did a lot of interface with the Jordanian Special Operations Forces, but I'll just say it was interesting. Again, this is kind of like when ISIS is kind of coming to power in Iraq.
Yep.
So geopolitically, it was very important. There was a lot of GOs coming through, a lot of like bilateral exercises going on. It was a good deployment for me, and of the fact that it was a good way to kind of get reacquainted. Because again, I'd been out of the community for a while, but it wasn't like super exciting,
boring
or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, I wore a suit most days and worked in the embassy. I learned way more about the State Department than.
Were you by yourself on that?
Yeah, I was an individual augment.
Oh, so all that happened, and you get hurt, and then you leave, and she's in Southern California?
No, she was still
Or
here.
she was here by herself?
Yeah, but with the
Okay.
kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good segue. Come back from that deployment, obviously a lot of tension. Started marriage counseling, didn't really pan out. And then summer of 2017, her and I separated. So I joke that my life's kind of like a bad reality TV show. She actually bought a house around the corner. So we live in the same neighborhood, and our backyards are kind of catty corner.
Well, that works out kid-wise.
It's cool for the kids. I'll tell you, if you're going through a divorce or separation, I don't recommend it.
Yeah, I don't either.
Being able to look out your back window into your ex-wife's yard and see your kids on their swing set, or your kid in her driveway shooting baskets, and have them that close, but
You're not allowed to.
But you're not there, can be kind of brutal. 5 years later, we've kind of gotten over that, but yeah, like I have a gate in my back fence. My kids walk 50 feet, and they're in their mom's backyard. So,
Yeah, in the beginning, I can see that being terrible.
yeah, it's not ideal.
Afterwards, when you get your co-parenting shit together, I'm sure it's nice. Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not gonna say all the time, but
yeah, I mean, so like today, my middle son Tristan, my 14-year-old, it's summer, so they're out of school, but when school was in session, I would literally walk to the school bus stop at the end of the street, meet him and his sister coming off the bus, walk back to my ex-wife's house, kind of turn around, go home, and then 15 minutes later, he'd come over and, we'd work out in the garage. So,
yeah.
From that perspective, it's cool. Or,
That's dope.
if they, need something from mom's house, they just run over and get it quickly. So, yeah. But yeah, initially it's like anything else. You got to fight through that initial friction. So yeah, we got divorced. I did another Afghan deployment, 2018, and then did another deployment in 2020 to Iraq. I was a deputy commander for the.
These are all with MARSOC?
Yeah.
Because you said you spent the whole last portion.
Yeah, the last 7 years, I just kind of bounced around the command doing different jobs, which was great. I was telling somebody the other day, like, just the caliber of people in that command is exceptional. And so, again, that was kind of what pulled me back. Hyper intelligent, mature, able to problem solve, really creative, just want to get after it. And so for me, it was great to be able to spend the last 7 years of my career there. And then I retired ultimately in 2022.
Yeah, that's dope.
Yep. So yeah.
What was the biggest? What would you tell people about retirement? Guys that are coming in on retirement. I know we'll get into the Honor Foundation and what we explore, but just as you, what struggles or like successes did you have in retirement, like post-retirement, that maybe you didn't see or weren't on the radar?
Yeah. So first thing I would say is it's a process, and I don't really like to even use the word retirement in the construct of leaving the military. I retired from the Marine Corps. I prefer the word transition. And in my current role as program director for the Honor Foundation, we talk a lot about transition. And if you think about it, we've all transitioned multiple times through our life, even before we get into the military. We've transitioned in the military. So leaving home when I graduated high school, going to college, leaving Ohio State to go to the Marine Corps. Every time I PCS'd or took a new role within the service, that was a transition. It was a new, a new boss, new coworkers, new environment. So we're always having to evolve and adapt. And I think going back to it being a process, I knew probably a year and a half before I actually left active duty service that it was time.
Yeah.
And I knew that because I was fed up with people controlling and dictating how I spent my time, how I managed my calendar. What
do you mean by that?
So
you mean the Marine Corps, like commands dictating what you can and can't do, or when you can do them?
Yeah. So I'm sure you've had this happen to you. Like you're at work, right? You're on active duty, and it's like, oh, there's an inspection coming, so we're staying until all the gear is cleaned and put away.
Sure.
I was on the general staff my last assignment when I was at MARSOC, the last year and a half or so that I was on active duty, and people would walk in at 4:00 and hand me a brief or something and go, hey, the general wants this, and you're like, cool, when? Tomorrow morning. Like it needs to be on his desk by 8. And you're looking at your watch and you're doing the mental calculations going, well, I'm supposed to be at soccer practice, or I'm supposed to be at my kid's dance recital or whatever, or just at home eating dinner. And so you can't leave. Saying no is not really an option, and you're not getting paid overtime. So you're not being compensated. And I've heard guys say before, like, in the military, like every sergeant's paid the same. Like you could be the rock star, meritorious promote, like,
or the shitbag,
do the thing, or the guy who's like handing out basketballs at the gym and you're getting the same salary. So being compensated for my time, being able to control how I manage my time and where I put priorities, because what I realized in the last 3 years is that my number one resource that I have is time. You and I are sitting here having a conversation right now. When this is done, we're never going to get that time back. It's gone forever. If you want to go out and get a side hustle and make more money, you can always do that. So can I. If we need to buy more stuff, we can do that. So you can always get more of things.
Never more time.
Never more time. And that's what became really painfully obvious to me. And as I was approaching that decision point, my oldest son was finishing middle school, getting ready to go into high school. The others are each 2 years behind. So he's 16 now. He's a junior at Topsail. His brother's going to be a freshman, and then I got, my daughter's going into 7th grade. So I wanted to just be present for them. Like fatherhood just became something that was really just more of a priority. And again, we talked about this a little bit before the show. I think it's challenging for a lot of men, especially in the post 9/11 generation, and especially in high performing units where you want to be the best Marine, soldier, whatever, but you also have an obligation and a responsibility as a father and a husband. And a lot of times those collide, and sometimes it's just there's not enough time. And so that decision became really easy for me. And as soon as I hit my 20-year mark, so I was, retirement eligible, is when I decided to punch out. And I was fortunate that I was able to join an incredible organization like the Honor Foundation and fall into my current role as program director for the campus here. So what I do now is twice a year we run a 12-week executive transition program where we effectively train mostly Raiders from MARSOC, just because of our proximity to the base here, how to effectively transition. I like to get them in the program about a year before they retire or separate. And we spend the first month really just digging in on the individual, figuring out what makes them tick, what's important to them, what do they think their life ought to look like in their next chapter, not their career, but just the next chapter. And then we move into resumes, LinkedIn profile, networking, things like that. And what I really attribute that to is you've got to have the destination in mind before you get there. And I think one of the mistakes a lot of veterans make is they get hyper focused on a job. Yeah, I just need to get a job, but they don't spend that time really thinking about, again, what do they want the next chapter of their life to look like? I mean, and it can be, how often do you want to go on vacation as a family?
Sure.
It could be.
People don't do that. That's one of the things I was just writing up, because people don't think about what they want or what ought to be the thing that they want. So if you don't know what you want, if you don't know if you want to be a fighter or a bull tamer or, an artist, if you don't know, then you could never properly aim at what you want and then focus on getting to where you want to be.
Exactly.
And it was my problem too. It was a lot of people's problem in transition, because you get out and you're not thinking that. But if you never establish where you want to go, then you could never aim properly for that.
Right.
I love that.
And so I think what we do a really good job of with the Honor Foundation is we spend that foundational time on the front end. We give them tools in the second phase of the program that help them to accomplish those goals. Again, your unique story comes out in your resume. It comes out in your LinkedIn profile. It comes out in a networking event or talking to someone at your kid's soccer game or in a job interview, because we all have a unique story, and we really focus on storytelling within the program, because our stories are what help us connect on a deeper level with other humans.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think also, kind of to your point, we try to open the aperture, and it's not necessarily that, well, I was a communicator in the Marine Corps before I joined Special Ops, so I should go into cybersecurity. One of the great questions my boss likes to ask her fellows is, what are you great at that you never want to do again? Because the military trains us to do what the military needs and requires. We may be good at it, we might not. We develop skills. Skills are different from talents. Talents are things that we do naturally. They're things that give us energy. They're things that kind of fill our cup. And we want to try to align that with what we want to do going forward. So you can literally be anything you want to be when you grow up, so to speak. When you exit military service, if you're willing to work and you're willing to connect with the right people to find those opportunities. And so that's the other thing that we try to do is we encourage our fellows to go out and have conversations with people that do the things they're interested in, to make sure that, you mentioned bull tamer, like, go talk to people that do that.
Yeah.
Make sure that's actually what you think you want to do, and all there is to know before you dive in. And
100%.
so I think that helps, because what we do see at the macro level, there's a lot of turnover, because I think veterans don't necessarily do their homework, so to speak. And so, I think it's on average, most veterans transition out of their first job post-military after 6 or 7 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so we seek to, really find that value alignment and do that introspective work to kind of mitigate that. We want to increase the longevity. That way it looks like they had a successful transition. And we use the term fulfillment. And I wrote on my whiteboard in my office a year ago, fulfillment does not equal employment. Employment is, I have a job, I got a paycheck, I can pay my bills.
Sure.
To me, fulfillment is is there joy in my life? Again, do I control my calendar? Do I define what success looks like for me? And, is my employment a means to that end? I don't make a ton of money working for the Honor Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization. And so, that's not really the goal.
But it fills your purpose tank up, huh?
It fills my purpose tank up, because I get to, again, help people from my tribe, my community, figure out what is next for them.
Yes.
And it also affords me the autonomy and the independence, again, to, really control my calendar. I have a phenomenal boss, and, she tells me what needs to be done, and basically ask me what resources I need to accomplish that, along with my other teammates. And so, she doesn't micromanage me, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And by being able to prioritize and figure out, what I think is most important in that moment, that's what really drives me. And we talk about in the program, finding your why, if you're familiar with Simon Sinek.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And so my why is to focus on what's most important, so we can all become the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think what that means to me is there's always a lot of noise. It was that way in the military. Everyone's got an opinion, I found real quick if their name didn't say commander after it, then, it was really just advice. Even in the transition space, like everyone has an opinion, but I think a lot of times people's opinion generally defaults to one of two things. It's either what they did that worked or what didn't work, or, the opposite of what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we've developed through the Honor Foundation over 10 years. This is our 10-year anniversary. We've got 10 campuses. It's pretty exciting.
What, different states?
Oh, yeah.
Or
Yeah. I'll talk about that in just a second. But we've developed this core curriculum that's been incredibly effective. And so that's what we try to deliver. And then from there, there's other things that veterans may want to pursue. Maybe education, maybe entrepreneurship.
yeah.
Maybe different internship programs or, things like that. I call that kind of like the Chinese menu of transition, and I expose them to that, and I'll help introduce them and make introductions and let them know it's there. But, the core of our curriculum is what we really, try to focus on. And then, just to your question. So 10 campuses, Virginia Beach, San Diego, Nashville, Tennessee, Tacoma, Washington, Joint Base Lewis McChord, Tampa, Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, Camp Lejeune, Fort Liberty, 2 virtual campuses.
Check.
So, we'll serve probably over 800 fellows from across all the special operations components.
Now, and when you say, I want you to walk me through this. Like, let's pretend that I applied or, I don't even know how that works. Do you go out and recruit these people? Do they apply to you? Who's eligible? And then once somebody gets into it, without giving away your own sauce, like, tell me what a person would expect. Like, you have a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
How does that go? How does the networking go? Like, what are you guys doing to be able to be effective for these people?
Yeah, so anyone who's assigned to a Special Operations Command is eligible for our program. So
Army, Navy, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Predominantly, maybe I'll just throw numbers out, 60%-ish. I don't have the data right in front of me, but Navy SEAL, Marine Raider, Army Green Beret, Air Force Special Operator, CCTs, PJs, individuals that have been through some type of assessment selection program. And then the enablers as well. So you've got comm, log, intel,
Sure.
EOD, all these different folks that are assigned to the commands that provide those capabilities. And then you've got, people on the staff. Maybe it's the comptroller, maybe it's the guy in the G1 section. If they decide that's where they're going to retire, then they can apply. And then, it's just based on how much space we have available in the cohort.
Gotcha.
We run the program in person twice a year, so there's a fall and a spring, and again, it's about 12 weeks in duration. And it meets a couple nights a week, so it's not during work hours. It's usually at an off-site location. We meet in Wilmington. Some of our other campuses have relationships with like the local community college where they're located. But it provides that opportunity for the individual to take the uniform off, to leave work at work, and then to start thinking about being, Sean or Ryan instead of, Lieutenant Colonel Carano or, Staff Sergeant, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's by design. And again, we have a very defined curriculum that we run them through over that period. We also assign them a coach, so everyone has kind of a mentor, so to speak, that just walks alongside them and helps to reinforce the curriculum, but also to be kind of someone to encourage them or, accountability partner or, hey, what do you think about this? Because sometimes there might be, an idea, it's not really fully formed yet. They're not sure and they just want to bounce it off of somebody. And so our coaches are phenomenal. Rick Green, who I know has been on the show, is one of our coaches here locally. Rick's fantastic.
Yeah, he raves about it.
I mean, the guy's got, decades of experience in both active duty and the private sector. He's got an extensive network of contacts. One of the things that coaches are great is helping connect our fellows with people that, again, work and play in the spaces that they're interested in. So that's really valuable. And we encourage the fellows to go out and have those types of fact-finding conversations. It helps them to refine their story. It helps them to collect information so they can make well-informed decisions, and it helps them to build out their own professional network, which for many people, just by circumstance, has been limited up until that point to who they've been on active duty with, or who they may know through familial connections, or maybe from college or something to that effect. So it helps to expand that.
And you guys, I know you mentioned LinkedIn. Is that the only platform you use as a foundation?
We use LinkedIn a lot, just because it's where your professional reputation lives.
Agreed.
Again, it's not necessarily social media. It's more of, hey, this is me. But what I like to tell the fellows is your resume says what you're capable of based off what you've done. Your LinkedIn kind of allows you to humanize yourself. That's where you can put where you went to college, where you volunteer. You can post about things that you're passionate about. Like for me, I like to post about being a dad. If I see something, out there on the internet that talks about, fatherhood, like I'll share that. Just because like that's something that's very important to me. And just, letting the fellows know, like you can kind of, be a human being. Whereas before, and I think, you probably can relate to this on active duty. A lot of the things that you believe, say, etc., they go through a little bit of a filter because you always represent the United States Marine
100%.
Corps and that sort of thing. So it's shifting that paradigm somewhat, but still ensuring, your marketability and not wanting to close yourself off to opportunities and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Would you say that any professional person should be on LinkedIn?
I would say 100%. In fact, we do an event where we take the fellows out to meet with different business organizations kind of toward the end of the program. It's basically a field trip where we go in and we talk to leadership. Maybe it's a veteran panel, maybe it's a leadership panel. We'll tour the space. These are all indicators of culture. And one of the things that we consistently hear is like, you have to be on LinkedIn. If you submit a resume, they're looking at your LinkedIn immediately. And if you're not on there, then you may not even get into the maybe pile. I hear that a lot from talent acquisition professionals. So
I've been on it now for a minute, but that happened. Lieutenant Colonel Emmanuel, he's one of my mentors back in the day. 2010 push with, as the commander, and I wasn't on it. And I've been like 2 years there, and like a year and some change into my podcast, into my book. And he called and basically gave me an ass chewing, saying, "Well, you stupid? Like, you not know whatever it is, but you need to fix yourself. You need to get on here." And dude, it is. I love it. It's professional. That Facebook and Instagram, that's fun for if you want to share pictures of your family or you want to get in like a fight with somebody in the internet. But LinkedIn's not like that. It's very professional, very helpful. I've extended a huge network through them, pretty quickly. So I would say the same thing, and somebody had to tell it to me because I had no clue. And
a lot of it has to do, I think, when I talk to the fellows in the program, what do you want your brand to be? Or when people say your name, what do you want them to think about? And, I tell them, for me, it's very deliberate. I want them to think about, hey, he was an active duty Marine Raider at one point in time. He's very passionate about, independence and freedom in the United States of America, fatherhood, and, I also like to do triathlons. You can throw something fun in there. You don't have to be this like robot or anything like that. So
I think you should definitely humanize yourself 100%. On any platform you're on. Sometimes that becomes necessary. The empathy and sympathy game plays bigger when people think you're a human. Not think, but you know what I'm saying. When you humanize yourself and you make it believable that you're just a person too.
Well, we have a coach and faculty member, great guy by the name of Bill Kiefer. Bill wrote an awesome book called Insights from the Employer Side of the Desk.
What is it?
It's called Insights from the Employer Side of the Desk. It's a book about military transition, and it's a great format because it's little snippets that you can kind of just chunk through. But Bill talks about, I think he's interviewed over 10,000 people for different roles throughout his career. The two questions that an employer is asking is, internally in their head, can you do the work and are you going to be a good fit? And again, I think your resume talks about, you know, do you have the qualifications to do the job that I need you to do? Can you solve my problem? Can you make me money? Can you save me money, et cetera? And then your LinkedIn is, what I want to like hang out with this dude. Like,
Because he passed the flyover test.
Yeah,
Or the
like,
layover test.
Could we have a beer together or a cup of coffee or something like that, and get along and have a good conversation? That's again where, you know, being able to humanize yourself, I think, makes you an attractive candidate. And so, to your point, if you're not on LinkedIn, you may be missing that opportunity, whether it's somebody wanting to come on your podcast, somebody wanting to do a business deal with you, somebody want to, you know, hire you as a potential employee, or even, and I tell the fellows too, like, the skills I think that we teach in the program are transferable, whether it's full-time employment or you're trying to get into business school or you're trying to solicit investors because you want to go the entrepreneur route. Like, it's really just about, you know, being a good human being and that sort of thing. So yeah, I love the job. I have an incredible teammate. Shout out to Monica Fletcher. She's kind of the, you know, they say behind, you know, every successful man is a woman shaking her head, and like, she does all the things that I don't enjoy. And she does them extremely well. So we work really well together as a team.
Teamwork make the dream work. That's for sure.
But yeah, it's a great organization. I'm very fortunate to have found this opportunity. Just a quick plug. I think we talked about earlier, I'm doing a fundraiser because again, we're a 501(c) nonprofit. And so I'm doing a series of races over the last several months that'll culminate this November with the Phoenix Ironman. It's kind of a bucket list goal of mine that I've always had to complete a full distance Ironman. And so I've got a fundraiser. People can donate, they can sponsor, whether it's, you know, $10, $100, they can do it one time.
Yeah, send me that information because I'd love to get the community involved, at least my community of people involved, and I'll get involved for sure. And what would that fundraising money go to? So
what that does is it's going to help us continue to fund the program going forward. So every year, you know, basically we have to raise enough funds to cover our operating budget for all of THF at all 10 campuses. And so that money just helps us to pay for things like dinner for the fellows. It helps us to pay for faculty. It helps us to pay for transportation when we go on those trips where we go visit businesses. We rent a big charter bus, stuff like that. So
now, if somebody just wanted to give to the program by way of donation, how would they do that?
So they can either do it through that link to my fundraiser, and they can also go on our website, www.honor.org. There's a donate button on there. And again, it could be a one-time donation. It could be a recurring donation. We have a very elaborate, there's a lot of different ways to give. We have a whole team that basically handles that kind of stuff.
Okay.
You can donate a car or a boat. You can write us into your will. There's literally any and every way you can think of to support a 501(c). We've got a mechanism in that, but
I got you.
Online giving is probably the easiest, and it makes a huge impact. And what I love about our program is it not only impacts the service member, but it impacts the families. As you know, a lot of times the families kind of they tend to be transient when you're in active duty. It's every 3 years you get orders and you just go and no one gets a vote. We actually do a great job, and Monica's been fantastic about this. We run it's kind of a bolt-on. We call it transition to team sport. But again, we understand that when the families and the people that are closest to us, when they understand what the fellow is experiencing in transition, it's a better outcome overall, and they can support more effectively. So we do a workshop that she coordinates, and we also make sure that we always invite spouses, significant others, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, when we kick off the program for orientation. I've had those individuals sit in on different classes, whether it be, you know, resumes, because a lot of times a spouse may have broken employment, LinkedIn as well, networking is another one. And then we also help connect them with other organizations, like Hiring Our Heroes has some fantastic resources for spouses. And so we've got a great relationship with Craig Weimer, who runs that here in North Carolina. And so again, we try to be a connector to people. We don't necessarily have the resources to do all that for them, but we know people that do it phenomenally well, and we're able to make those introductions.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And so your full-time work with them as a director?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you. What else? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
That's a great question. Again, so I think life's really about chapters. We talk about in the program, people statistically transition 5 to 7 times during their lifetime. So the reality that I'll, spend the next 20 years as program director, in my current role is probably unlikely, but I don't know exactly what the next chapter is yet. A lot of that has to do with my children. So my daughter is going into 7th grade. I've got, 6 years before she graduates high school. I don't plan on doing anything different in the next, probably 2 to 3 years. But once she starts driving and all that kind of stuff, we'll see. I mean, she's already told me that I'm kind of not cool, and
I'm experiencing the same. I got 12, 10, and 8. I'm in the same. My 12 already thinks that she's cooler than everything. So.
Yeah.
But that's good. I want him to feel that way. So
it's funny, like you go from being like a superhero to like the most embarrassing,
annoying
person on the planet. It seems like it happens overnight.
We're the authoritarians that say no. I don't know.
So honestly, I don't know what's next. I'll hopefully find something that I'm passionate about that I can transition into. I think a lot of it's going to have to do with lifestyle. I was actually up in Montana about 2 weeks ago, volunteering at another nonprofit and phenomenal organization called the Station Foundation that supports special operations families. And, it's just beautiful up there. I had my 14-year-old son with me, and we were running along this river and see these like incredible properties. There's no cell phone service, so you just go digital detox. I mean, it's just good for the soul. I just kind of made an offhand comment to him, like I could see myself spending summers up there and winters down south, somewhere where it's warm. But I really don't know. We'll just kind of see where life takes me. But
what do you do for fun?
For fun, that's a great question.
I know you do. I know you do the running and triathlon style stuff. Is that the fun?
I enjoy that. Yeah. I think I'm trying to have more fun. Like I'm trying to be deliberate about having more fun. I have a type A personality.
Shoot?
Work drives me. Not really.
Or hunt? Or fish?
No, I'm city boy, man. Grew up in the suburbs.
I got you.
No, I enjoy the training. I enjoy my job. I enjoy spending time with my children. My oldest plays basketball at Topsail and plays AAU.
Okay.
So Logan, he had a game last night out at Trask, so I went and watched him play ball. He's like 6 foot and 180 pounds. I'm not sure where he gets it from. His mom's like 5'3", I'm 5'8". But he's a stud, and he should do well this year. So I enjoy that. His brother, nice. The one that went to Montana with me, Tristan, plays travel soccer.
Okay. That
kid's a stud too, man. Like he's got a leg like a cannon. So we go to a lot of tournaments, and then.
So that's your fun.
Yeah.
That's good. That's like the best fun.
Yeah, and then my daughter Reagan, she's in like a bunch of different dance classes.
Okay.
And so she had her recital this past Saturday.
Okay.
Does clogging, hip hop, ballet. Yeah,
oh wow.
She's in all the things. So they keep me busy. I do like live music. I might go hang out downtown this weekend. There's supposed to be an Alice in Chains cover band
up here
down in Wilmington. Shout out to my buddy Joe Upcarrion, who owns the Eagles there. They've got a summer concert series going every Friday.
Shout out.
If you want to go check out a free concert, go hit up the Eagles there on Friday nights in Wilmington around 7:00, I think. And then I like college football too, man. So Ohio State, it's in my blood.
That's where I'm from too. I'm a big Ohio State fan.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, my brother got his master's from Ohio State.
Nice.
And his second year, I went up to campus during my senior year of high school and sat in on like some history classes, not math, but like history. Yeah. And he took some World War II specific class, and there was a couple of them I went up just to see if like maybe I would.
Yeah.
I'd have fucked that up. I'd have wasted somebody's money. And I graduated cum laude years later with my degree, but at 18, I would have messed it up.
Yeah.
I made the right decision. But my brother's wicked smart. He's a principal now in Southern Ohio.
Okay.
And so he's kind of like got the academic side of me churning for years.
Right.
Just from him going to Ohio State. So,
Yeah.
but that was cool. Any other shouts or plugs or anything that you would find valuable to the people listening, or of course, to your family, friends?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just shout out to everybody that's, helped me get to where I'm at in my career. Like I said, 2 years ago, I had my official retirement ceremony from the Marine Corps, and, you get very reflective and realize quickly, you serve, obviously, as you know, it's not about you or your particular accomplishment. It's a lot of timing, a lot of people looking out for you, a lot of people pouring into you. And so just, thank all those folks that have helped mentor, coach, guide me, to this point in my life. And then I would just say, anybody who is interested in potentially getting involved with the Honor Foundation, we are 100% volunteer powered. Monica and I talk about that all the time.
I love that.
There's a lot of different opportunities, whether it's helping review resumes, helping with interview prep, helping as a coach, or making a financial contribution. We never turn anybody away. We seek to establish, relationships and bring people into the tribe. So if they want to reach out, they can email me, Sean@honor.org. That's SEAN @honor.org, or hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to have a conversation and figure out how we could integrate them, again, into the tribe in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, and I want to touch on it just a little bit before we close out, because there's a lot of different foundations, guys. There's foundations for everything. There's funds for everything, and that shit exploded during the 20 years of war. It exploded, and I'm not throwing shade. Now, this is not a spot for me to throw shade, but I've talked about this before, that do your research on who you're sending money to. Make sure that who you're sending money to is pouring that money back into who they're saying they're pouring it back into, because there's been a lot of foundations along the years that didn't do that. And then, we're not helping the way we think we should be helping, or that we thought we were helping. This is one of those. I know too many people that are connected with the Honor Foundation, either fellows, instructors, cohort students. I guess you could call them students, or
We call them fellows, yeah.
fellows. There you
Yeah.
go. That rave about it. The two of my biggest foundations that I love are the Semper Fi Fund, which that helps mainly Marines, which I get, and it's not everybody, but they help me and they've helped people I know. And then the Honor Foundation is another huge one that always comes up when talking about positively influencing warriors into the world.
Yeah.
And that's really what I care about. I gave my whole adult life to that organization, and then it got cut short at 11 years, and so that's what I do now. I want to help that. So, thank you for coming out. Go ahead.
Yeah, since you mentioned the Semper Fi Fund, I'm a direct beneficiary of them as well. I've been through the Intrepid Spirit program
Yep.
here at Camp Lejeune. I guess that's another plug I would put in, is any service member, there's a lot of things that happen to us on active duty. And, the way that I try to lay that out for the fellows in the program is, it's kind of like buying a car. You drive a new car off the lot, it's got that new car smell, low miles, all the bells and whistles. 10, 15 years later, there's some weird stuff going on under the hood. Maybe
Yep.
there's some different noises coming from it. There's some dings in the fender, some scratches in the paint. So just take care of yourselves. I think a sign of strength is being able to reach out a hand and ask for help. Going through the 5-week program over at the Naval Hospital through Intrepid, to me, was a game changer.
Huge.
It helped get me, kind of back on the path of wellness, because I didn't realize, based off of all the time that I had spent deployed and under high stress workups and inspections and things of that nature, like how much my baseline had shifted. And so I think, just being able to focus on your own personal wellness, again, it ties into my why statement: focus on what's most important so we can all be the best version of ourselves. And a lot of times that requires assistance. So, Semper Fi Fund is fantastic. Intrepid Spirit's an incredible program. There's a lot, like you said, of organizations out there that are willing to help veterans. Because at the end of the day, you want to be around for your kids. You want to be around for your spouse. You want to be around for your friends and your teammates, and you want to be able to show up as the best version of you. And so I think, that's really important. So, appreciate the shout out for those guys. And I'm, like I said, very grateful for everything they've done for me in my life as well.
Likewise, I went through Intrepid Spirits for 16 weeks to find my, whatever it is, Yeah, I don't think they know, but they're the ones that ID'd it and said, hey, there's issues here that you can't. And they probably, eventually saved me out. I started having seizures. So God knows if I was downrange when that happened, you take a whole team out just to get me going. And so I fought it all the way until that happened. And I was like, okay, they seen shit I didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they're great, man. They got great doctors. And you're right. If you don't take care of yourself, then how could you take care of anybody else? And I would also say that the guys in the cohorts, the fellows, and the different beneficiaries of different things, don't just go get that. Like, go get that and then spread that. Spread that goodness to other people, because you can't get everybody in these programs. But if we can get a good portion of people who have the G2 between their ears to go out and say, hey, this is what I learned there, and you don't have to go there. Just like, this is my notes. Let's go over this. That alone can help somebody. So, if that's, you good?
I'm good.
All right, I'm good. Hey, guys, choices, not chances. Appreciate you coming out. I'm going to have all this information from Sean from the Honor Foundation and the program in the bio. And you guys hit him up, follow him, get on LinkedIn, and check these guys out. If nothing else, how about sending a check over? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to support the foundation by donating some money to get, to grow it, to keep it moving. It's doing nothing but being a net positive to our community, both local and then national. So anyway, guys, appreciate you coming on. Choices, not chances. And we'll see you next time.
Louisiana Gun Shop, your firearm headquarters, specializing in concealed carry guns, ammo, and training. You can get your Louisiana permit with us. Also a large selection of AR-15s, or if you are that build-it-yourself type of guy or gal, we have all the parts to build and customize your own AR-15. Glock, SIG, Taurus, Ruger. We have all the brands, both in the store or at LouisianaGunShop.com.
Not too far. You're marking a building. Hit him. Yeah, that's good.
That's a good shot. That's money.
Yeah.